So, what is metaphysics in its essence or in its broad contours? This question has been addressed by Martin Heidegger in this short book, "What's Metaphysics?" So it's a very tough and abstruse and terse uh, engagement with the idea of how we construe metaphysics, starting from uh, Aristotelian metaphysics way back, and the way shades and how we basically contextualize metaphysics in its essence as a endeavor of human knowledge, because it's the essence of where you ground your being into. So it's something. It is the being of all the beings. The where you can just it has elements of presence and existence in it, which is behind the existence. You can see it that way. So how Martin Heidegger has, in a way, he has tried to just address this question of metaphysics. For example, he's starting with he's quoting, maybe it's a very famous statement of maybe Descartes, when he says that whole philosophy is like a tree whose roots are metaphysics, trunk the physics, and the branches which extend out from that trunk are the rest of the sciences. So you can say, in the body of knowledge, in the schemata of how we make sense of things. So even in normal language, what is physical is physics, and what is beyond physics, or what is where physics can be rooted in, you can take it sort of as a metaphysics. It's root of it. So it, in a sense, maybe addresses the questions of being as well as origin simultaneously, with a sense of wonderment, wonder, which is somewhat puzzling, in the sense that it's not, you cannot somehow locate the being and the origin simultaneously in some concrete form. It gives you some direction, or it gives you some hints where you can go, but it doesn't address this question of being and existence in an so that very etymology is, in a sense, what I could say, it's the etymology is itself complicated. For example, what for example, what Heidegger says, because metaphysics questions beings as being, it is left to being and does not turn to being as being. So this is what I was trying to capture: the existence and essence, and the admixture of both, which is not meshed in a very meshed in a sense which will have some unsettled things. The mesh, it's not meshed in a sense which will leave you settled. That would be the proper say. For example, thinking which thinks about truth being is not satisfied, of course, but neither does it think again. So, so what? Mm, so from to quote Heidegger, so the question of existence, this metaphysics has been right throughout the history. It harbors a truth whether from Anaximander to Nietzsche to maybe other schools of philosophy, where metaphysics as such is tried to how we can locate or how we can root it, the prevalent or available discourses, theologically or historically, how we can see metaphysics in that context. Because if we I'm quoting a passage here and there from Heidegger, and see how he has tried to address this question. Uh, Subject to the fact that it might be for example, subject to the fact that it might not be wholly encompassing, because the the proposition, the way we ground metaphysics, if you just see, Immanuel Kant famously said, "Is metaphysics possible?" So, or prelomagna of his metaphysics. So, whether the classification of analytical and synthetic statements. So, where would we take metaphysics? So, if synthetic experience, if metaphysics starts as an endeavor from it should experience, it should encompass what you can experience, but it should not be entirely rooted in experience only. So it has some intuitive elements which have some a priority attached to them. So you can say that the roots of metaphysical statements in the Kantian way of looking at things is a priori synthetic judgments or statements which will encompass entirety of experiences, and it has not the entire, it's not rooted entirely in the empirical or the experiential parts of the how we see the world. So if we see Heidegger says that the question, what is metaphysics, asks a backward question. Many of those who heard the lecture surely wondered. Moreover, the lecture answers the question raised in the title with the other question, what is being? So that's what I'm saying. The existence or being, how we root existence or being. So it's somehow has the way we address metaphysics is also related to this question. Or for example, the basic question of metaphysics, in the words of Heidegger, is would be consummated then in the fundamental ontological way in the question from the very ground of metaphysics and the question about this ground. It is as if the way we say roots or the trees physics, the roots or metaphysics, or it's something is how you ground your knowledge system, or how you ground your existence, or how you ground your knowledge system. And the ground of the ground, you can take it or characterize it in some sense is the metaphysics as a question about this ground, the ground of the ground. You can say it that way. So, ground of this ground. So the other thing is that, for example, so in the scheme of knowledge, when if you just if I'm just going back to Kant, when he says it, is metaphysics possible? Is metaphysics as a natural science possible? So is metaphysics is metaphysics as a metaphysics as a, to quote Kant in the precise sense what he says. So is for example, how is pure mathematical possible? How is pure natural science possible? How is metaphysics possible in general? So where can you locate the mathematical sciences in the scheme of how we can relate apart from the way we locate empirical sciences? So where do we locate mathematical statements or mathematical judgments in the scheme of metaphysicality of things? For example, there's a very important thing which he says: no one method of dealing with objects dominates the others. Mathematical knowledge is no stricter than the philological historical knowledge. It merely has a character of exactness, which is not the same as strictness. To demand exactness of study of history goes against the specific strictness of humanities. So maybe here in this paragraph, he is uh, somehow not entirely satisfied to characterize mathematical knowledge as a be all. So you can reduce apart from if you read Russell and Wittgenstein, where the famous statement of Wittgenstein, Russell is that mathematical statements are Russell being convinced by Wittgenstein that that mathematical statements are agreed upon linguistic rules. So if they are agreed upon linguistic rules and they are tautologies, so they cannot be the ground of the knowledge. That knowledge is not secure in that sense. So maybe Heidegger is characterizing the same. He is just echoing the same thing when he says mathematical knowledge is no stricter than philological historical knowledge. So philology means language, sentences, words, and history. The combination of history and language and logic and agreed upon linguistic rules. So it's not whole enough to just uncover the mystery of being, mystery of groundedness of that being, which you may call metaphysics, or you may call the existence, who no idea behind the existence, which is to be uncovered, to my understanding, which is to be uncovered. So, so if you, for example, if you further, if I just quote him further, where he says, for example, at the outset, we gave question to this kind of every metaphysical question comprehends the whole of metaphysics at once. In every metaphysical question, questioning existence is thereupon also taken up the question. So the groundedness of the being is whether the knowledge, if it is grounded in the empirical part of the world or in the theological way of looking at things, or in how we can or in the perceptive part as a part of human perception, which has some cognitive element to it, and whether that cognitive element differentiates the mind and matter in that sense, or whether the dualism exists or it can be dissolved. These are the questions. But the way how Heidegger characterizes metaphysics is that every metaphysical question comprehends whole of metaphysics at, so it is the groundedness of being in its totality. And even when you are trying to question that groundedness of being, so it's that question is also included in it, to be this is what he wants to say. This is what he wants to say. So if and further, for example, there is one very important statement which he is saying is that for example, discover the philosophy comes about only through our own life undergoing curious engagement with the fundamental possibilities of existence as a whole. So if you say the roots or philosophy. General philosophy is composed of the trees physics, the roots or metaphysics, the leaves and fruits are the other sciences. The whole of tree is philosophy. The philosophy as such is it starts as a wonderment, or it starts as a curious engagement with the fundamental possibilities of existence as a whole. Decisive that as for the engagement is for all, making room for a being as a whole, not letting oneself come to the nothing. That is becoming free of the ideals which everyone has, among which we are in the habit of losing away or way. Finally letting this suspense range into what it is permanently swings around to a basic question of metaphysics, which no thing itself forces on us. Why being, after all, and not rather nothing? So this is a very important thing. So if you, the totality of trying to engage with the wonderment of life or wonderment of existence, if your philosophy is an engagement defined in that context, so that thing should not maybe should not stop us from this even this engagement, whether why if metaphysics at all, um, well, why there is existence or why there is not any existence, why there is something or why there is not nothing, or why there is at all anything. Yes. So in the if you in the Eastern traditions, if I quote Ghalib, which is a Urdu couplet when he says, "तुझ बिन तो कुछ नहीं फिर हंगामा आ रहा ही क्या है." So if there is if existence exists beyond God, if without God the existence of the universe you cannot imagine it, then why this thing? Why this cry? Why this what? Why this even asking this thing? So that puzzle and wonderment of bewilderment of existence, and maybe its existence, whether it's prior or its existence existing in co-evolution with the existence of some other being. So that wonderment, maybe Heidegger also somewhere he is very much appreciative of poetic sensibility in capturing the metaphysical elements of human existence and metaphysics as or intuitive part of that experience, or you say that intuition sometimes captures the essence or the existence or the metaphysics of existence in a more than that of philosophical this thing. So what for example, so here again maybe which I'll talk maybe more, for example, according to Heidegger, modern science neither serves the purpose first modern science neither serves the purpose first given to it nor searches for some truth in itself. uh, So, in the history of sciences, particularly empirical sciences, so the very existence of thing, it's like metaphysics has been dominated post Kant. It has been dominated by the empirical aspects of the existence, and the post the metaphysics of empiricism somehow necessitates an attitude which is somewhat maybe empirical in its it's also the metaphysics it's an empirical metaphysics. So being the groundedness of being, so if the modern science to be the matter all is be all and the and all. So here, for example, Heidegger says modern science neither serves the purpose first given to it nor searches for some truth in itself. So somehow he is critiquing the way modern sciences look at this the groundedness of being as the question. So once the essence and existence, and what is beyond existence, and if the existence has been material, so beyond existence, so the dominance of empirical way of approaching things somehow scuttles this thing. It doesn't search the truth in itself. So what the Kantian, the post-Humean, the empirical way of looking at science is somehow will doesn't do justice, or do what is not favorable to addressing this question of metaphysics in that sense, being open to all possibilities before you are going to maybe hinge on something not concrete in that scientific sense. Maybe transcendental might be it might be immanent as well as transcendent. That's the vocabulary is written like that, even though it might seem vague in that sense. So, for example, what is the bottom of metaphysics? The question must be thought metaphysically and at the same time on the grounds of metaphysics. That is no longer metaphysically thought. Such a question is in an essentially sense ambiguous. So what is the ground of metaphysics is in a sense, because the ground of being is called metaphysics, and in it is contained the question that what, because it's not answering this question, the groundedness of being, where you can find it. So it's a perpetual that question. So if the question has not been answered, so you cannot say what is the ground of metaphysics. So it's a subtler point which he's trying to cover up in this thing. For example, in other passages says, calculative thinking is entirely under compulsion to master everything by means of logical consistency of procedures. It cannot tell everything is calculable in figuring before it's being variously worked out as sums and products. Is already a whole whose unit. So in the process of trying to bisecting, or in the process of having a Cartesian mentality of dividing or deconstructing whole as made up of sum of parts. So when we are trying to operationally look at things, view things that way, so even that part is a whole in its own self, and even while you are experimenting as a being, so the prior assumption of trying to maybe dissect a whole into various parts, it's somehow fallacious in this sense, because uh, because because you as a human, you as a conscious observer is also trying to import some value to what you are measuring, and in the process either it might not remain the same thing what you are measuring, or uh, or the question is fundamentally flipped off. Maybe that would be better way of which is incalculable in that sense. So there's some methodological limitation per se of even to appreciate it, whether that procedure is somehow only existence syncs with being. Being may also be construed as a grammatical middle voice, which is lacking in modern languages. So that's it. So being may also, so if we define existence as being of the beings, so we can see these things. Maybe there are some sentences of maybe Immanuel Kant, maybe which will try to, for example, maybe they will give us some, for example, the way he has tried to figure out analytical statements and synthetic statements, and try to somehow localize the metaphysical parts of statements in the synthetic judgments. Yes. So maybe this is a very interesting in the sense that maybe I'll quote some of the sentence. For example, knowledge that we care about is the sort which, although precedes experience rather than arising out of it, can be conferred by existence. So judgments of experience are empirical. So this is what I was saying in the Kantian sense. So so synthetic judgments can only be characterized in terms of metaphysical things. So the business of sciences is to intuit and understand, to think. So how is nature itself possible? So how is metaphysics possible in